Cool. Okay. Whoa. Wow. That was a crazy start. Sorry about that, guys. Welcome. This isn't actually Coffee with Creators, but we're going to treat it like one.
I still got a coffee out of it. Black 2 sugars,
Like a beat cop.
there you go.
What else could go wrong today, Joe?
I don't know. You're theoretically in charge here, but I have to say, so far this morning, you're not inspiring confidence. You're just not, and I've tried to calm him down. I offered to give him a back rub. He was really sweating bullets. And here I am, calm as a cucumber, cool, nice and easy. And Seth is just batting around this place like a I don't know, crazy person.
He was calm as soon as I saw him on the corner like this. And then I put my arm around him. I grabbed him. I guided him to the front door. I got him to sit down,
Yeah. There's construction outside. If you hear drilling during the course of the thing, it's they're tearing up the sidewalk outside. And Seth actually rescued me because I wandered right past the barrier and I was about to fall into a drain pipe. And he said, "No, Joe, this way."
Oh, Joe.
Anyway, nice to see you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Miranda. This is the Adorama event space. That is Adorama, and you guys are totally welcome here. In fact, the immortal Joe McNally that I have to, I guess, my left, your right, will actually be here shooting live. Yeah, he's actually going to be putting his money where his mouth is and actually doing it in front of your face. But you'll actually be shooting an athlete later today at 5 o'clock. So be sure to check out Adorama Events on YouTube. That's the other channel where we do all the demos on that channel. But if you're in New York, you can stop him by and say what's up and bother him in person. He loves it.
I love it. I love it. And we're going to do a shot of a preeminent martial artist. And it's going to have to be kind of a creative approach because we don't have much space here. But she's very dynamic, and I've been thinking on it, and I think it's going to be cool. I might even try like a double exposure. Why not? Go for it. I mean, if it fails, it fails. It won't be the first time.
Yeah, that's Joe's quintessential advice. Why not? Go for it every time. Every time. If it sucks, take another shot.
Well, yeah. I mean, photography is about rebounding, I mean, not everything goes well, as you know. And,
What is that supposed to mean? What? You looked at me very strange.
No, it's no judgment at all. But no, we've all failed as photographers. Anybody who's picked up a camera with serious intent has run right into a brick wall called failure, disappointment, all those things, that pop up. It's part of a creative life.
It is. Before we get super deep, I got to get through the housekeeping part of this.
Okay.
First of all, guys, that's all the social. You should know who this guy is. If you don't, go check yourself. But I want to say thanks to OWC for sponsoring this. We've been using OWC cards, you and me, pretty much for a while now on the Z series.
Quite a while. Yeah.
They've been pretty great.
I tell you, those cards are amazing. I just went out of the country, and I was 6 days shooting. I took their new 2 terabyte drive, which is ridiculously small.
The SSD?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that right here, actually.
And I had in my Z9, I had 2 OWC 1 terabyte cards. That's it. I never changed cards, and the amount of gear I took on that trip for storage via the OWC ecosystem, was just ridiculously compact and durable.
Yeah, they've been around a long time, and they're just kind of like making more of a name within the memory card system. But as far as computing goes and memory goes, they've been around a very long time. And we want to thank you guys for sponsoring this and the live stream later today at 5 o'clock when Joe dusts himself off and actually shoots something. And I just want to say,
why do I do this?
I don't know why you do this. And I just want to say quick thanks to Gotham for the coffee, man. Thanks. Cheers.
Oh, we got Gotham coffee. Nice.
They're 1 block over. We keep it local, and the owner is actually a photographer and filmmaker, so it's pretty cool.
And he owns a coffee shop.
Pretty cool. So he was very eager to sponsor this, and we want to thank him. We want to, we keep it hood, man. We keep it in the neighborhood. We keep it very community.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about Adorama. It is, it's a big store. It has tremendous reach with the TV and all this sort of stuff going on. But to my mind, it's also a very local camera store. And I'm a huge fan. I've always been a huge fan of your local camera store. Absolutely. Because it's a huge resource, right?
Well, part of what I think people skip is the communal aspect of the resources, right? You have information online, you have forums to talk about things, sort of, but when you have somewhere to go where you can actually see in front of your face lessons, demos, talk to people who've been through the ringer, and really get a sense of the human behind what it takes to do this. If you're thinking about doing it seriously, or if you're just a hobbyist that's trying to just get a little bit extra going, you get that insight inside of being by yourself in your head, looking at why doesn't mine look like this? You know, that whole craziness. Sure. So that's what this event space, the ethos of it was. The original event space was built for that, which resurrected now. And I had to bring in the legendary here to kind of carry it over the goal line and get you guys in here. You know what I'm saying? So, but we do have a lot of people in the chat. I just want to say what's up to Mike Pillows, Ron Keller, Domingo. Yeah, you guys have sound. Don't start with me. And wait, do I have a mouse? There we go. Wait, what? Seth has a pizza box as a reflective for his signature product. What would you have for your signature product? You have signature products.
Yeah, I designed a few lighting arrangements during the course of my day, but you know, nothing right now, nothing really current right now. I tell you what, in the realm of lighting, which is something we both do a lot of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go up against Profoto right now with any new products. They are just kicking it. You know, there's some beautiful stuff they're coming out with. And I'm not like promoting Profoto. We have a great relationship, but I just am sincerely impressed with some of the stuff that they've come out with and how easy it is to work with.
Yeah, they've definitely been prioritizing easy and streamlined. This isn't a Profoto commercial. I want to get into what this is about because we're already like talking a lot, right? Joe McNally, if you didn't know this, did this little event a few times now. It's called hold on, let me see if I can pronounce this right, Olympics. So this is, tell me, this happens every 4 years now. So listen, I think as photographers, especially if you're a younger photographer from probably the earlier generations, you always heard about, I want to get into National Geographic. I want to be in Sports Illustrated, and I want to shoot the Olympics. Like that was like the trifecta for people, I feel like, coming up. You always heard it over and over again. Now, publications come and go, but the fact that all eyes are on what Joe, you said this to me once, you're witnessing greatness. Mm-hmm. And you have got to be at the right place with the right equipment, with the right skill level to bring the world what we get to see in the Olympics, which I'm going to pull up some of your photos while we talk about this. But can you talk about like, what's the pressure like witnessing greatness? First of all, actually, before we get into that, what Olympics have you shot? Because you have a pedigree going on here.
Yes, it's a very odd one. I've shot 4 Olympics, which makes me a lightweight. You know, frankly, there's photographers out there who have shot 10, 12 Olympics. And their level of experience is so deep and rich. I mean, you've got people out there in the sports world like an Al Bello at Getty, just absolutely peerless. So I'm not putting anything forward here saying like, oh, I am the deal when it comes to the Olympics. But I've been blessed to have shot 4 of them, and it's weird. Frankly, I shot the '84 Olympics in Los Angeles before Seth was born. I shot the Millennium Games for Time Magazine, 2000 in Sydney. And 16 years after that, I did Rio, Sports Illustrated. And then I did Tokyo with my agency, Zuma Press.
So, and each, I like to think of each Olympics having its own personality to it, especially because of the region, the time that we're in. I mean, in between each Olympics is 4 years. That's especially in this era, how much change happens throughout the world, how much change happens in technology. If you watch an Olympics now, you see like camera work that blows your mind compared to what we used to have. People don't even realize how crazy it is to have underwater shots of the fingers touching the wall for those Olympic swimmers.
We all owe Heinz Klutmeyer for that. Sports Illustrated, magnificent photographer with Sports Illustrated for many years. But yes, the technology is phenomenal. In Rio, I came back up to the Sports Illustrated office, and Donald Morale, who is an amazing sports photographer based out in San Diego, is there working several computers, and he's just tapping the computers. And he's got remotes over 2 different events. So miles away, he's sitting in the office tapping like this and making photographs at venues that he's not even at. You know, I mean, the technology is just ridiculous.
And do you think that adds to the pressure, though, that like, all right, excuses are over, it's not the gear?
Yep, I think very much. The pressure has always been on, for big sporting events to not miss the moment, right? But I think now with technology, coverage is so seamless. You have cameras that are firing 30 frames a second, and the edge, right? What you're looking for is the edge. It's not even about a different position because all the positions are mapped out. Anything you can do that might separate you from the literally 100 photographers who are sitting next to you with the same lens.
Yeah. So how do you deal with something like that where, first of all, there's like the decisive moment for the moment that is the Olympics? How do you deal with getting yourself centered to even focus on what you should be doing? Or are you just seasoned at this point and you just like roll it off your shoulders? Like, what is it that gets you game faced?
The bigness of the moment can get you some jitters or put you on edge for sure. At Tokyo, for instance, when Simone Biles came back,
right?
That was the story of the moment. In Rio, of course, it was all Usain Bolt all the time.
Yep.
So those big races where the big stories of the moment are teeing off and competing for the gold, that puts you on edge for sure. But here's the thing. My secret, anyway, there's lots of photographers at the Olympics that are much more experienced than I am, and they have to shoulder the heaviest burden.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So de facto, I'm like irrelevant, and which I love because in numerous, races and this and that, I know there's a gaggle of really, really great shooters at the finish line. So I'll drift down the track. Everybody I'm sure remembers David Burnett's amazing photograph from the '84 games, where he couldn't get a good position for I think it was the 800 Mary Decker Tab, when she bumped into Zola Budd, the South African runner, and she fell and she lost the gold. And David didn't have a great position, but he was there at that slice of time when that collision happened. So you never know. You could drift down the track and be away from everybody and say, oh, this isn't going to be so good. And then all of a sudden something happens.
Yeah. And I think that's really where you see the professional come in, because a lot of people can set up, there's the finish line. I'm going to make sure that that's all set and ready for when that time hits. But the people that understand the story, that's your main job. Your main job is to complete a story rather than that one moment of who won.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, my theory of sports, or what has always been operating in the back of my head, is that I actually don't care who wins.
Nice.
The competition is the competition. What I really am interested in is the obsession behind sports. What drives someone to be so excellent that they work and labor their whole lives just to get an extra tenth of a second out of their legs or something like that. And so that to me is fascinating. That's why this little chat we're having is talking about sports on the field and off the field, because when you're on the field, it's crucial. It's split second. You have to be on it. But when you're off the field, maybe you're doing concept photography like that, for instance, the intricacy of the moves of a preeminent martial artist, Sifu Anderson. And then, blades are flying, stroboscopic. I've got bicycle lights attached to the swords, all that sort of stuff. This is an image you think your way into. Mm-hmm. It's not Usain Bolt charging at you. Yeah. No time for thought there.
Have you ever been at the Olympics or like a major sporting event and seen someone just crushing, or like maybe not even getting that much notice because they aren't a bigger name, and you're like, I've got to stay in touch with this person. There's something that they're going to come out of nowhere with, or I could do with off the track. It's the person that's not the center of attention, but have you seen that person?
Oh yeah. And in fact, I've known that person for years. I mean, just as an example, I mentioned David Burnett. David has shot the last several Olympics on, a 4x5 speed graphic.
Yeah.
And he's surrounded by photographers who are just banging away at 30 frames a second, and he's got 4x5 sheet film.
It's that one shot, man. Well, you get two shots.
And so that indicates to you that it's about perspective. Seth has left the set, so I'll take over now.
They know that I'm the only one producing this thing, so every now and then I got to octopus my way over there. Come on, man. Hey, it's a miracle I get anything off the ground here, right? There is some stuff going on in the chat. Selective Imagery is saying, big fan of the man behind the creative lighting system from Nikon, in my opinion, and the king of speed lights. Jeez. We should make you a crown out of speed lights. That'd be amazing.
Well,
have been
those
following
are
you.
kind words, unnecessary, but very kind.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
and if you guys have any questions for Joe, this is why we're live. Is you're in that chat and you're allowed to ask some stuff. And I think there's just so much to come up with when you talk about the Olympics, because you're talking about the pinnacle of sports, really, at a moment that won't come back to them.
That's it. These are times that will not come around again. So if you miss it, you miss it. But sometimes again, happenstance can play a part. That picture that we've been showing of Usain Bolt, that picture is the result of pure unadulterated laziness. And
he looks like he's been sitting on the couch a while, man. Yeah.
I looked down at the finish line. It was 200. It was his gold run for the 200 meter. And I looked down the way, and the finish line was just chock-a-block. I mean, photographers everywhere. So I thought, all right, I'll stay at the turn. I think there were 2 other photographers, and we had free room to kind of swing cameras, move around. And the thing about this, and I'm no genius here, I didn't anticipate it, but afterwards it made sense to me. Bolt was so far ahead of the field most of the time. By the time the finish came up, he was cruising. There was a very well-known picture from Rio where Bolt is actually crossing the finish line, and he's turned over his shoulder and he's laughing.
Unreal.
He's relaxed because he knows he's won. Here at the first turn, he's actually working, and you can see it. You can see the effort. You can see the musculature, everything. And that picture ran as a 2-page spread in Sports Illustrated.
Nice little flex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the folks at the finish line, well, they got the finish picture. But this had a real sense of exertion, blowing the air out of his, because Bolt is big for a sprinter.
Right.
So you had to study him. When we were there, I think SI, we had like 6 or 7 photographers, and we were all assigned a slice of his 100-meter run.
Right.
I had to start. And so you got to be careful, right? Autofocus can grab the other runners.
Mm-hmm.
The other runners smaller than Bolt, and they broke faster. So I was watching. I had seen him in the heats and whatnot. I was watching. And so Bolt gets out of the blocks slower than the other runners, but then he gains steam and passes everybody about a third of the way into the race. So if you use autofocus, for instance, your AF could grab the other runners who will jump in front of him. So I kind of watched them, and then I got up. He was standing at a point out of the blocks, just about 3 feet out of the blocks, and I drew a focus on him and then dropped into manual. So I knew I was fixed, and it wouldn't go anywhere.
And this was DSLR.
I was shooting DSLR.
Yeah. This. You have to realize it was at a time of also not just the world, but where our industry is, right? Like where we were for the gear, the technology, what was available to you as a tool, and you use the tool as a pro. And we're like, here's where I'll get the most success out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sequence in here somewhere that is pretty indicative of where we are technology-wise. You can keep going.
This is insane, by the way.
Well, that is a crazy shot. That cost Sports Illustrated about $40,000, and it took me a week. It's done on film. It's in an airport hangar in Lubbock, Texas. It's the entire United States trampolining team in the air at once. And if you go to the next, if it's there, yeah, see, that's how I had to work, because I couldn't get the trampolining team until the day of.
Of course, yeah.
So I went to a flower and balloon shop every day, and I got these hot air balloons, and I checked with the coach how high the athlete would be off the trampoline. And so I ran the balloon up to the height, and then I used the balloons as markers for my lights.
That's pretty good. That's like, you're like Mythbusters, you know that?
But let's see, let's keep going here. If we can, that's Reggie Miller in college. Again, illustrative kind of stuff. There, okay, there. Okay, so follow this. Go again, bing, 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 jubilation. She had just set a gold medal, Yulimar Rojas of Venezuela. So that's D6 autofocus.
That's sick.
And it just tracked. So the technology, you rely on the technology. Oh my goodness, it's just phenomenal.
So that's pretty amazing. But this was a D6, Nikon D6.
Yep.
I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, so there was a question in the chat as far as, so how do you decide the moment of what lens to go with?
Well, interesting. At the Olympics, I worked two main cameras. I had a third camera with me with 70 to 200, but because I was a one-person band, I would, for most events, I would take out, especially track and field, I would take out an 800. That'd be my main glass. And then I would have, what is that zoom? I think it's 180 to 400. I think, and that would be on my other camera. So I'd have the 800 on a monopod, and I have the other two cameras slung. So it meant, because track and field is happening all over the place, you got a heat finishing here, you got a long jump going over here, you got the pole vault going over here. So it meant that from one position with the 800, I could actually reach other events in addition to covering the one that was up close and personal. So that was just a strategy. It's nothing new, but sometimes you might think about bringing a longer lens that you might conceivably need, because then you can reach further. And then you go back, or there was a wrestling picture.
Wrestling?
Or maybe go forward, right at the end of this, maybe. Yeah, there. So that's way big a lens. I think that's a 600 for Greco-Roman wrestling. And again, the question of irrelevancy. I know the event is being covered.
Yeah.
I know they're going to get the winner, they're going to get the jubilation, all of that. So I brought a 600, and I just tried to piece out human architecture, the muscles, the sweat, and get in over tight.
Right.
You got to jack your ISO. But then sometimes when you can get into that super tight thing, you're going to, if one of those wrestlers jumps in joy, I ain't got it. I know I ain't got it. But I was more interested in this kind of thing that speaks to the
details,
the spirit of the sport, etc.
Well, I mean, wrestling is holds and grappling and keeping control. So also this is a little more of like a commercial aspect of it. This could be used in several applications all over the place. It doesn't just have to be an Olympic shot or whatever. This could be like an American Express ad if they wanted to do something, or get a grip on your life. And they get this is also something like we've all taken shots from other jobs.
Oh, sure.
And we're like, you could apply this to this. I mean, how many times have you shot something? I know I have, where you're like, this is going to go nowhere for nothing. And it turns out to be the thing that's been paying your rent for like a few years after royalties.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yep.
Ronald Pollard has a question in the chat. Hey, Joe, with current technology, what is your favorite autofocus area mode for action or sports?
Well, I'm using 3D eye detect a great deal.
On the Z9?
On the Z9, yeah. Yep.
So do you keep it just like basically a 3D autofocus single point? You don't do like the wide area and like limit the...
I don't really. Every once in a while I'll go into a wider area, and you design you seek out the eyes, or if you're shooting animals, which I don't really do very much, you key on that. If you're really being selective and you're working wide open, then I'll go to a small area, kind of a small cursor, generally not a single point, but I'm always back button focused.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm always back button.
The way I have my camera set up, I know makes people angry. And when they grab my camera, I'm like, yeah, it's not for you. I am not a back button focus guy.
Really?
I've never had that habit. My habit instead is have to press, and my autofocus on buttons on any camera, I use it to lock my autofocus. So what I can do is I have AFC on when I want it, so it's always focusing when I want it. And then whenever I want it to be AFS, all I'm doing is crunching down on that lock.
That's a smart thing.
So I can fly fast, and it's been
figure that out. I could figure that out. Give me one of your cameras. I'll figure it out.
I don't know if I want to give you one of my cameras. I think we both broken enough of each other's gear over the years.
Oh my God.
All those times we looked at it like, tonight something will break.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock when he's shooting live, something's gonna go down.
Something always happens.
It's all right though. But I mean, it's really interesting how we've become this obsessive about autofocus. Like it's insane, right? But you were shooting the Olympics before this was even like a conversation, I think, right?
Oh, sure. Autofocus wasn't even on the horizon, So, 400-2.8 was a really go-to lens that Nikon came out with a long time ago, and manual focus, beautiful lens, but you're looking through a pipe that has a pretty tight field of frame, and you've got to just settle in and focus. I mean, if you can there's some rodeo stuff in here. There, go back. There. So that's the futurity, which is the cutting horse Super Bowl, because it's America, so everything becomes a competition. My horse is better than yours. Anyway, so so that horse is turning in the Will Rogers Stadium. We have the entire stadium strobed. So we had 10 speedotrons in the ceiling.
Speedotrons.
Yep, 2,400 watt seconds. And so when that horse makes the pivot and turns back, I was keyed on with the horse's eyes with a 400 millimeter 2.8. That's why the frame is so tight. And that's manual focus. And what I also did, because I wanted a tiny bit of motion, I dropped my shutter speed into like maybe 1/25th or something like that, which didn't affect my overall exposure all that much, because most of the exposure being driven by the strobes. Just want a little bit of just tiniest bit of motion.
So it's all deliberate choices to get you this result, and it's all based on actual knowing what you're doing. Drop the shutter speed a little bit, but knowing how much to drop it so it's not a mess and all that stuff.
Exactly.
But focusing on the animal's eyes like that, manual focus, all that chaotic movement. You can be honest. You sneezed, you hit the ring, it just nailed. It got that one shot that's sharp. But it's kind of nuts the way we talk, like, because we're different generations in the same industry, and I feel like my generation got so autofocus obsessed. And yours was like not even a conversation at that point. So what was the major conversation in the early Olympics if it wasn't autofocus as far as photography went?
Well, right through Sydney in 2000, I was shooting film, and it was all manual focus. There just wasn't any options. You play the hand of cards that you're dealt. So a lot of this stuff that is maybe more the illustration stuff that you might see in this thing are things that I've either created or engineered to illustrate a sporting concept. So that's also at the futurity. I got sick of the horses. I mean, the horse goes back and forth, the cow goes back and forth. So I commandeered a men's bathroom. And I dropped
That's a nice bathroom.
Yep, I dropped a painted backdrop in there, off limits to the public, and we set up a photo studio. And I started photographing cowboys. Like stuff like this to me is more interesting than the horses and the cows. To be honest, I'm interested in the human factor, like all these cowboys getting and then out on the range. So that is the 400-2.8 manual focus from a hunting seat on top of a pickup truck, and we're banging through the underbrush. And it's an unstable platform. You just have to calm down, draw your focus on the lead horse, and then start banging away.
I got to tell you, I think one of the things that I struggle with, because I'm not into sports, right? My career started in BMX, skateboarding, all that kind of stuff that really I didn't care about.
But that's a sport.
It's a sport now, but when I was coming up, you were arrested for it. I mean, that's it was a bunch of punk rats playing in the street, right? What I always found as an outsider is we get numb to how great what is in front of your lens. So because you're showing us the best athletes at the biggest moments, at the biggest time, over and over again, you kind of get numb to the importance and the weight of what's actually happening. And I think that's got to be a struggle for a mass audience as a photographer. You're showing them the best that can be, and you're wanting this reaction, but instead you're kind of like, right, we've seen them go through winning. We've seen them jump. Like, how do you get different from that? And I think that's what you kind of do, is you're showing the human aspect of it. And I don't think we get sent that enough, especially in this era when we're fed the images that are of the moment are like the decisive wins.
Sure.
And then we see the secondary, like, oh, well, this is what Usain Bolt was laughing at when he turned his head. Like that comes after. Don't you feel like that's like a second?
Yeah, I think to some degree it's about bandwidth, because we are hammered every day with visuals, and so yes, the jubilation shot as the runner crosses the finish line. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. And then you move on. You're on Instagram. It's like, let's just keep rolling.
The amount of years it took humans, the athlete to get to that level, you to get to your level, the equipment to get over there, the traveling, the moment, everyone, it's just 3 seconds.
Yep.
It's 3 seconds of this, Joe. How's that feel? Huh? How do you feel, Joe?
Here's the thing. I feel fine. See, because I was there and you weren't.
Oh,
and
true.
and
Fair.
I'm a photographer and you're not.
What? Hey,
No, I'm not talking to you personally.
They're gonna clip this.
No, I'm not talking to you personally, but I'm talking to the public in general. If it's one of the things
Wrecking my
I've
rep.
always been a saving grace for me is like win, lose, or draw. Okay, at the end of the day, here's things about my life, right? I'm a photographer, okay, and I love being a photographer. I do what I love, and also too, I'm the only guy in the world who gets to go home to Annie every night.
Oh, scoring points. See, this guy's smart. Thinks ahead.
You know.
Going home, what would make it? Got it.
You know, so that's very important to me. Maybe hit a couple more that are maybe more illustrative. I can talk about it a little bit.
Just drop this a little bit.
Drop it too much. Am I speaking too loud, Seth?
Yeah, well, you're popping, Joe.
All right, so there's a little different picture of the Masters, right? I was assigned by Golf Digest, and I think Golf Digest assigned me to photograph the Masters because I hate golf. You know, I mean, I could care less about golf. I think there's one other, you know.
Something.
Now Seth is leaving the set again.
Hold on. I gotta lower the overhead volume because it's going into the mic. Hang on.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. I'm having a miss you. We can talk about that.
I'll tell. Well, there's the thing. Golf Digest assigned me to photograph a story about the Masters, and it was called Inside the Ropes and Outside the Ropes, because Augusta, Georgia, is just kind of a regular old town by the highway in Georgia.
Okay.
But a couple weeks of every year, it becomes this paradise of golf, and billionaires are coming in on Lear jets, and the whole place transforms. So they wanted to see what the town was like and what the Masters was like. But the side benefit, because you do your research, Augusta's favorite son is James Brown. And so I called his agent. He was in town. I called his agent like every morning, like 7 or 8 mornings in a row. And then she finally called me back. And she said, James will meet you at, it was like an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. I was on the course. I'm just chugging. I'm screaming off the course. Throw my stuff in my truck. No assistant. You know, Scott was someplace else. He showed up later in the morning. And then I park and I walk into this hallway, which thankfully is a nice looking hallway. And then I start pulling furniture out and putting it on the sidewalk. Try that in New York, you know, but nobody bothered me. I just was pulling their stuff out onto the sidewalk. I set up, it was basically one light. It was kind of a deep softbox overhead. And I'm desperately throwing this together. And I turn around and he's standing in front of me and looks at me and goes, "Hi, I'm James Brown." And I was like, I know.
Wow.
You know, and he stayed for about, 10 frames. And then he looked at me and goes, "And here I thought you were a nice man, but now you're going and taking all these pictures of me." And I was like, okay, the session's over. And I slung another camera with a tighter lens and I made 3 or 4 more pictures. I said, "Mr. Brown, I'm very thankful and honored that you would come." And I got a picture of James Brown out of a golf assignment.
That's sick, dude.
And that's the only picture that's going to live out of that assignment. Trust me, you know.
What did he say to you after you got those extra frames?
Nothing. He just kind of, I shook his hand and he just walked away.
I might be wrong here, but didn't he pass away close to this?
Very soon thereafter, it might have been his last portrait session.
At a golf event, you got the last living portrait of James Brown.
Maybe. I mean, he did some stuff after that. He was photographed, but in terms of a portrait session, I'm guessing. But there's a statue of him right in the main street of Augusta. And also, the thing that, as a photographer, here's the great thing, because Golf Digest ran inside the ropes, outside the ropes, inside the ropes, outside the ropes. So I had to photograph the head of the Masters, who was just a horrible human being. And he was a misogynist creep. But they said, we got to get his portrait. So Masters said to Golf Digest, if we get to keep the picture, we'll let him, your photographer, photograph. And then Golf Digest came to me and I said, yeah, no worry. Don't worry about it. So I made this picture. I forget his name. But I made the picture of this guy and he was like, arrogant. But I had to do the flavor of the town. So one of the popular institutions in Augusta, Georgia, was Whitey's Strip Club. It was legendary. And so I got in there and I said, can I meet the guy who's the owner? And I photographed him with a couple of the ladies. And the head of the master's picture ran here, and right across from him ran Whitey at the strip club. I was like, yes, don't mess with the photographer, you know? It was like revenge from the pages.
You know, Joe will tell you he loves shooting. What Joe loves doing is chasing and completing stories. Like, without a doubt, you pull out names from over like a billion years of your career but you can't, but then you don't know what you had for breakfast.
I don't.
It's unbelievable how much, you know what, one of my newest favorite story of you, like new school, because we have so many stories. My new favorite anecdote with Joe is he calls me and he goes, hey Seth, can I get in your studio for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, of course, Joe. He goes, and Seth, I haven't shot one frame all of 2024. Joe, it's January 9th. Like, you were freaking out that much that you haven't shot for a week.
Yeah. Well, it becomes part of it. I am taught, we had a little bit of a flap a minute ago, but I am talking to a really fine young photographer, and I'm always honored that he would invite this bag of bones in.
You got some meat.
And so, there's actually tremendous respect that transits back and forth between the two of us, even though we give each other a ton of grief.
I wouldn't take it from many people. This guy can. Joe has taught not only me, but I believe my generation of the area of photography I was in so much. Without the progress of speed lights, I don't know if I would have had a guidance to getting the images I was trying to pull off at the time of my career to then build on and build on and build on. So I know you're like, oh, gee, shucks, but I do think you realize the weight you've had in this industry, but there's this like splinter effect of what you've done that I don't think you can ever really get a handle of. But guys, there's a lot of people that your name just comes up as this like Mount Rushmore dude, man. Like, well, Joe did this, so I can do this, like, well, if Joe can shoot an entire city block with 87 speed lights, I can shoot this Girl Scout troop with 3. Like it's one of those things. And like, I love you, Joe. And I think you always set a precedent for us, and you're still going. Like, you don't stop. Every time I check in on you, you're like, yeah, I know I'm a billion years old, but I'm going to go into this coal mine and hopefully come out, but I'm going to document these guys working first. Like, what is going on? What are you doing? And then when you were like, I'm putting in for the Olympics, I'm like, Joe, you're 100. Stop. And you're like
and I did.
You put in for the Olympics again, but
and I just said, no, I'm not going. And there was no guarantee I was going to go this year. Paris is going to be, well, it's going to be crazy. But all Olympics have their own particular, flavor and certain blend of craziness. There just is. I mean, in Tokyo, there were no fans in the stands.
Yeah, I was going to say, you couldn't get more crazy than Tokyo. During COVID, when the world's shut down, there's all this. Could it happen? Will it happen? How do we make it happen? And then there is no audience. I don't think you're ever going to come across a crazier, weirder moment for the biggest event you could think of than having no one there for it.
Yep. But if it was going to happen, I'm thankful it happened in Japan because, the Japanese volunteers, the staffers, people who ran that whole shooting match, my goodness, they were amazing people. Just so helpful and so, just gracious, in terms of, okay, we've taken a big hit here, but we're still going to pull off this Olympics and it's going to be great. And their attitude was nothing but positive.
Yeah.
Go back a frame or so. Hit, keep going. Go. There. So that's not a great picture, but it's the archery at, that was Rio. And so sometimes, it's nice to mix this brand new technology with old stuff. That's a 500 millimeter mirror. It's an f8 manual focus lens.
The one with
it's the donut lens.
Yep.
It's 500 millimeters, but it's about this long and it's super stubby, right? It's like this big, it's fat. And it has this very definitive pattern in the out of focus areas.
Soap bubbles, yeah.
So I specifically brought that lens for archery, because I thought I could get details and then get this beautiful background. So sometimes mixing the old and the new, like you and I, worship the 200 millimeter f2. It's an f.
You actually own it.
Yeah, I do. I'll never give it up. There's some of those lenses that you marry that to some of the new technology, you can get some really cool stuff.
Yeah, what Joe's talking about with this 500 is they've been out there forever. they're basically very slow lenses. When we say slow, their aperture is pretty tight, but it makes a giant lens this big. It has a mirror as the last element, and there's like a knob in the front, and you're like, how is this a lens? But it does give you this effect of a long telephoto. It just has the weirdest bokeh, and that's exactly what you're seeing right here. But you guys can actually find these lenses very affordable, very easy to carry around with you. And if you like the effect, if you like the character of it, then it gave you the shot you want. I mean, people always get caught up in like, I watched Joe shoot a $14,000 400 2.8, and here he is shooting a 500. I mean, these are garage sale lenses at this point.
Yeah, you can pick up one of these for like, I don't know, $300, $400.
I bet you in the used department at Adorama right now. I bet you could find some for sure. It's just kind of wild. And they're actually brands, like smaller lens companies, that are putting them back out. And like these younger kids are like, whoa, look at this. I'm like, oh, you weren't here for it. You weren't here in the beginning. So they're just learning about it now.
That's okay.
There are some questions in the chat. I'm sorry for like ignoring you guys. We kind of get carried away. Do you scout the venue beforehand? Is asking Joe's Photography.
Yeah, I mean, when I can. Sometimes at an Olympics, you're arriving right at the last minute and you just got to go with the flow. The beautiful thing about the Olympics is that very knowledgeable photographers participate with the Olympic organizing committee, and they go in like literally a year or more ahead of time, and they start looking at the lens throws.
Wow.
So they start mapping out where the best areas for photographers can be. And those are actually photographers who are participating in those decisions, which I'm very thankful for.
That's so cool, man. Can you, do you think you'll ever be on that committee?
No, never.
Why not?
Because I'm just not that experienced an Olympic photographer.
You don't think they'd be like, Joe, everyone else is dead. Can we, no?
You know who's a great guy, terrific shooter, but participates on the behalf of photographers with the Olympic Committee a lot, is Nick Didlick.
Okay.
He's up in Canada. He's out on the west coast of Canada. Terrific human being and really good shooter.
I would just love to hear what the discussion is, like what they consider and prioritize all the time. Like I would love to hear how much weight they have of like, no, we got to move this thing a little over so we can get this kind of, must be wild.
Oh, it's crazy. And it's political, for sure,
yeah, sure,
because everything at the Olympics is in deference to television.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So as still photographers, we get, it's not the rear of the airplane completely, but we don't have priority.
Of course. They got to have those zipline cameras going where they need them,
all the
robot
time.
Cameras.
You know who was amazing at circumventing all of that was Bill Frakes. And when when Sports Illustrated was really a magazine, and he had he could marshal that budget, he did robot cameras at the 2000 games down in Sydney, and he riffed on. Have you ever heard of a slit camera? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's called a strip camera, yep, where it just elongates the image. George Silk did it way back for Life magazine with his kids in Halloween costumes, and it's just a wild classic, image. And Bill did the same for Marion Jones, the famous sprinter who was later discredited, but we didn't know that at the time. She won big in Sydney, and he's got this amazing photograph that's just this elongated image of Marion Jones just cooking down the track. And he had to really, really negotiate that through.
I always wanted to see someone take a swing lens and shoot something that's like Olympics with like the lens following and tracking while it's shooting. You
mean like a wide lux or
like where you get like 5 images per roll and it's like a swing lens, like the Fuji ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I always thought that'd be kind of cool. But every time I see someone pull it out, it's either landscape or the tables at a wedding. it's like, I just think like the line of runners and stuff would be sick. There are some more stuff in the chat. Do you ever just take in the events to watch them? If you get to them, do you ever just soak it up, or you're just all on all the time?
You're going to miss some stuff because you have to transit. You look around. Okay. I want to go over to the long jump, for instance, that sequence of Yulimar Rojas. That's on the other side of the stadium from the sprints, so you got a track all over there. So you're missing stuff. You can't cover everything. And every once in a while, you're just so bloody exhausted. Sometimes you kind of look around, when I shot the Usain Bolt sprint, I was, I think I had a 400 and I was in a good position for this start, but across the field, the pole vault finals were going on, and I was like, So,
Yeah, I'll
well,
shoot the pole.
whatever. But then it started cooking, and there were some amazing athletes going vault for vault for the gold medal. And I ended up making kind of a long distance picture, and it's framed with the whole vault apparatus. And the pole vaulter, she's an American, she took silver. She just nicked the bar for her gold medal try, and it tumbled. And when she was on the other side of it, she realized she had done it, and she clenched her fist and screamed to heaven. And I got that frame. It was one of the most popular frames I shot for the whole Olympics. And I'm not even covering that event. I'm across the field. And thankfully, Jimmy Colton, who's my dear friend who just retired, Newsweek editor, Sports Illustrated editor, chimed in on Facebook, and he said, this puts the lie to the myth that for a sports photograph to be good, it has to be tight.
Right.
And I was like, bless you, Jimmy. Thank you.
So, like, first of all, for a moment like that, for that person, must have just been, it'll never leave you for the rest of your life.
Never.
So have you ever reached back out to them? I'm sure they have endless images of the same moment from a lot of people. But have you ever reached back out?
I sent her a print, and she corresponded, I forget, Facebook or something like that, said her dad has that image on his desk because it was powerful impetus for her to try again.
Yeah, I always think about that too at the Olympics. Like, you miss, it's 4 years, so you get another shot at it, right? And like, what happens when you're slipping out of your prime because it's just in between those years?
I know. Look at Allison Felix, the runner, the sprinter. She's retired now, but she took a couple of losses, but she kept fighting back. A magnificent athlete. These, they're so fine-tuned. They have to listen to their bodies. And yes, I'm so sympathetic and empathetic to Olympic athletes because most of them, let's face it, are not Usain Bolt raking in millions of dollars. They're out on a lake someplace in the freezing cold rowing a scull for 4 years just for one chance. I mean, that is hard stuff, man.
That's unbelievable. Hey, so actually, what was that? Is there an after party for photographers at the Olympics? I'm kind of curious about that too, actually. There's got to be a camaraderie and a community within you guys.
Sure.
You're not just elbowing the snot out of these young kids, right? Like, rah.
No. There's a lot of camaraderie. Not so much partying, because you're so exhausted.
Well, also, people don't realize it's not just the event. You got to get the shots to where they got to go.
Right.
So you're culling fast. You're slinging to wire fast. Are you throwing Ethernet right to camera at all, or
in Rio, I had Ethernet into my camera.
And you go right to FTP servers?
Well, it would go right to my editor, right to his desk, 3 miles away.
No edit.
And
boom.
Boom. No, everybody sees what you're shooting, and you're just bang, 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 and it's getting funneled. If you're not on Ethernet, then you have to edit after, you come off the field and, you've got your laptop slung in your bag and you got down, you sit down in the editing area, you plug in, you download your cards. In Tokyo, David Burnett and I have known each other for a long, long time. He's a great photographer, great guy. I'm asleep. I am dead asleep at my computer. I think my fingers were still on my I was like this, and David comes up and put his hands on the shoulder. He looks, Joe, time to wake up. You have to finish your edit, and then you have to go to your hotel, and then you have to be back here at like 8 o'clock in the morning. It's like, yeah, God, it's just constant.
And you're lugging gear. It's so physical. I don't think people get it. They think it's just like, hey, I'm here. This is amazing. It's like what it takes to get there. First of all, to go through the process of getting the credentials, to get selected. Then you got to plan it. You got to get there. You're worried about your gear getting over there. Then you're worried about what you brought with you because you're wondering if you brought the right stuff, right? How many times have you gotten to a position you're like, I just had that 8 to 15 millimeter fisheye. Not kidding. I mean, it drives me crazy, and I'm a studio guy. I can only imagine when you're at the pinnacle of the world, And then you're worried about the safety of your gear because I'm sure. Well, we talk about Rio. There was a PTZ camera stolen out of Rio.
There were a couple of instances in Rio. Nonetheless, I loved Rio. Sports Illustrated assigned me to do a portrait of Rio because they knew I was kind of a feature guy. And in the first week of the Olympics, it's all about swimming, So I was going into the favelas, and photographing just the neighborhoods, and then they pulled me off of that, because the editors, were getting my stuff and saying, this doesn't look like Michael Phelps, send him to the games. What are we giving him money for? He's hanging around having beers with karaoke's.
Forgot the cigar. Yeah.
But I tell you, Brazilians are wonderful people, and karaoke's, natives of Rio, party.
Yeah.
They know how to party. And when Brazil would win any sort of medal, it would just break out onto the street spontaneously. Samba bands, you name it.
All that color.
I went to a practice session of a samba outfit. They have these organizations that, practice for Carnival. And I'm in there with the drums and stuff. I swear to God, I couldn't hear for the next 2 days. I mean, it's just banging, and people are dancing. I'm like, cool. This is cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be one of the best things about your career is you've been to so many countries and so many cultures and so much life. And then you've left them something like that pole vaulter. You're in that life now. That father is staring at something you created. Like that's wow. That's the coolest part. We all look back at how broken look. I have a broken disc in my back. I got a twisted knee right now.
I'm a collection of parts.
I always go like, all right, I'm in a lot of pain, but if Joe can still do another Olympics, I can get through. I can get this Friday, But people don't realize like how much it takes to do what we do. And I think one of the things I heard you say a long time ago that I always keep in my head is people don't understand the mantle of freelance, like what it is to put that mantle on, and it's really it's a responsibility not only yourself but like what you're delivering to the world. Period, and you're dealing with it after the fact. I mean, man, the amount of stuff I can't tell you how I feel everything. Everything hurts, man.
Yeah, no, it takes its toll, but as you say, the rewards are really great. You have to, a photographer a long time ago said to me, if you're going to be serious about this, you have to make uncertainty your friend. And I've lived for the better part of 40 years with never knowing where my next paycheck's coming from. And I just grew comfortable with that over time. I mean, sometimes it's been uncomfortable when you go into a dry period and things are like, oh, where's my next job?
Yeah.
But at the same time, without that risk, there isn't the reward.
The worst part about the dry periods, though, is even if I do the job tomorrow, it's going to be about 90 days till I see a check. You know what I mean? Like, and you're like, yeah, sure, the 30-day law. Yeah. Let's go to small claims. Like, it's like... The amount of stuff I remember, I don't know why I'm even talking about this, but I would do like $100 headshot days just to get something in my pocket. I would just throw it on Craigslist. I'd be like, I'm in New York. You're an actor. You need shots, period. Throw money on the table. And let's go.
I know.
It's what it's what happens.
It's what you do.
There is a question. How would you even apply for the Olympics?
Well, it's a bit dense, convoluted. Each country has its own Olympic committee. For Tokyo, my credential came through the IOC itself, but then they changed that up, and now you have to go through the USOC and make an application. There's website, et cetera, and you just have to. One of the main chits that you have to put on the table is who you are shooting for.
Right, the publication.
Because they're not interested if you've got like, a couple hundred followers on you're applying as a social media influencer.
So my YouTube channel will not get me a press credential.
You might have a chance.
I don't know, man. There's plenty of bigger channels than mine, but
yeah,
but like, what is a publication to them? Like, what is a viable publication? You think?
Well, obviously, the newspapers that are left and certain magazines, but the big players now that move in are Getty.
Oh, absolutely.
AFP, Associated Press, Reuters, those they give priority to those services because those services in turn service hundreds of publications.
Yeah, they're where they people feed publications feed. Like when you see an image from like New York Comic Con, it says like Getty Images in the middle of it. That's what it is. It's good. They're taking from the same pool, or I guess you would say.
Exactly. It's a wire service feed, and if you subscribe to the Associated Press, you can use anything off of their wire that's on their general feed. Sometimes we used to call it going overhead. Sometimes an assignment would be given to an Associated Press photographer who would go overhead of the net directly to a client. And that production was not available on the general wire service. It was only available to that client. So there's all sorts of different forms that this takes. But the wire services, I don't think I'm wrong here, are really the big players at the Olympics.
So have you ever, like, let's say you sign up for the Olympics, you get approved and all that stuff, or whatever, anything with a press pass or whatever, and you're like, I'm here for this publication, but then they go, hey, Joe, we're publication B, and we need stuff too. So under the table, how about you throw us a couple of images?
No, you can't do that.
Come on, man.
You can't do that.
What is this?
You know, because we're in the age where everybody knows everything. So like if you're double dealing a client and feeding them, you know, similar images to your main client, they're going to find out about it.
Yeah, that's
you know,
the relationship.
Unless you negotiate a deal prior to that. Say, can I used to be a situation, it would be called a guarantee. Mm-hmm. And so like my very first big international job was I was over in Northern Ireland when Bobby Sands died, and my agent told me, look, I got you $1,000 guarantee from Newsweek and $1,000 guarantee from Bunta magazine, and so I knew I had $2,000 to kind of like pay for my flight and expenses and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's rough.
But you know what it meant was they had first look. So Newsweek, by offering that $1,000 guarantee, would be guaranteed any of my stuff for a week. And if they didn't use it, that exclusivity would expire.
It's usage rights almost.
Then anybody could use it.
Right.
So there's all sorts of ways and shapes and forms this can take. The bottom line is, can you stitch together a package of financing that will keep you afloat?
Well, you know what's funny is, what's changed in this era, and I don't know if you touched this at all, but because the cameras are shooting so many frames per second now, right? Mm-hmm. I know personally a lot of pros that are like, say, shooting musician, they'll shoot images from a live event and they'll sell them the rights to that image or whatever. But because it's 20 frames a second, the next image is so close, they can still use this image. And if they can test it, they go, well, no, you got that image. Here's the file name. There's that image. Mm-hmm. This is another image. That's how crazy the technology is getting, that you're basically instantaneously getting your own rights back in real time.
I've never looked at it that way, but yeah. But recent incidents, the Trump assassination attempt.
Okay.
Doug Mills, Evan
Vucci. Unbelievable. Evan Vucci, unbelievable. And Doug Mills, unbelievable.
The coverage was just astonishing. Those guys are shooting 30 frames a second, and they stood, in the midst of the gunfire, they stood and they kept working. So that's a true example of what a pro is, because now we have those images. Because I don't know if anybody does, or maybe I'm just out of it. I don't remember video of it so much. It's like the video is from a distance, and then you hear the pop, 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 and then he falls down. But what I do remember are the still images, and that's been true my whole life. Mm-hmm. My memory is fixed in still imagery.
Yeah, well, it's video you play in your head, and it gets foggier, and but an image is still image. You're just. That's why when people put photo next to video, I'm like, yeah, but. So if you ever looked at like a video clip or like a cinema still or whatever, you'd be like, wow, the lighting in that one frame of that cinema is kind of, yeah, but you're in a dialogue. The narrative's going on. They're moving. You're in a scene. But a still frame, you have to have it all in there, mm-hmm. or the entire thing is trash. With moving images, you have so many more elements to. First of all, it's extremely hard to manage all the extra elements, but they can all carry where the other one didn't. And you don't have that in photo. You really don't.
No, still images has to stand on their own.
If you guys have any other questions, let them know in the chat. We're hitting time pretty soon, but don't forget 5 p.m. I'm dusting Joe off. I'm going to oil up his joints, and he's gonna do some portraits of a really talented martial artist in here at 5 o'clock Eastern. So that's on the Events channel, the other channel. I'm sure Fernando's watching. I'll throw a link in the chat. Or if not, come hang out here in person. We'll be here for it. But, the Olympics is... Whoops.
I was going to say.
Don't start. It's a screensaver, man. It's a screensaver. Do you want to grab any of these before we pop out of here?
Well, there's an illustrative photograph. Blaine Wilson, America's top gymnast. Those are shot in a soundstage in California with xenon arcs and smoke. I wanted like God beams.
You think?
Yeah, kind of. And then that's the year later after the Boston Marathon bombing. That's Big Papi Ortiz and the 3 cops who were on the cover of Sports Illustrated the previous year. You know, so James Brown, et cetera, et cetera. Here, scope on through a little bit.
We did these.
Yep.
This is wild.
Yeah, that's the entire United States women's water polo team underwater with a giant American flag I threw in the pool, and I just told them to play around with it. You know,
don't get wrapped up in it, please, and we'll be fine. This is crazy, man. It's like I never get tired of these images, like the bridge shots of the marathons and stuff like that.
Well, that's manual focus with a 600 from an open door helicopter. So that's, you know, that's
how straight you shot it.
Yeah,
you shot it that straight.
I can show you the original image.
That's photography. You hear that? I can show you the original. That's a photographer.
You know. Yeah.
These.
Yep. Yeah. So that pre stuff from see, I was assigned. I went over to Tokyo in January, February of what was originally going to be the Olympic year 2020, and I was doing a preamble piece with athletes and a mood piece about Tokyo. And so I was working with athletes. She's a well-known martial artist. I took her to a bamboo forest, and I think there's one with Mount Fuji in here. Did we pass that? No, keep going. Go back the other way, I think.
Sorry, guys. These went out of order, and if you couldn't tell, this entire live stream went out of order.
Okay, go back. Yeah, there. So that he is a legacy Japanese athlete, gold medal winner, gymnast. We brought a trampoline up to a view of Mount Fuji, one light picture, and it was illustrative, right? You know, the symbol of the country with the athlete who is still very powerful in terms of symbolizing sports and Japan's excellence at sports.
I mean, if you can maintain enough weight in an image to stay in there with Mount Fuji, I think you've got, you know, well, this is also how you think. I mean, look at the Michelle Yeoh photo you did where she's over the Hollywood sign. Like you always think these massive monuments to correlate to these massive presence people. It's really an interesting.
Well, I learned from really good people. Neil Leifer in the '84 games did an extensive piece on Olympic athletes with the symbol of their country. And I learned, in fact, before I did the Mount Fuji picture, I reached out to Neil and I asked him permission to do this because his picture is the photograph. It was what he did was even nuttier than this, wasn't a trampoline. He brought a crane up to Mount Fuji at dawn, and the gymnast of the hour, whose name I can't remember, is up there doing one of the, it's not an iron cross, it's another move with rings, and it's a beautiful photograph, and it's memorable and durable. And so out of respect, because I know Neil a long time, I called him up and I said, I have this idea for this athlete. I'm going to put him on a trampoline. Do I have your permission? And he said, of course, Joe. You know, that's like a comedian going, hey, is this your joke? You know, well, you know, it's mutual respect.
Absolutely. And we don't really, and I think now I'm sounding old. I feel like the young kids don't have that. They see something on Instagram like that's cool, and they go and emulate it or whatever. But that's some old school mentality right there.
I know we're getting late, but if you could pull up there's a shadow picture there. So there's a goof on my part. I went skateboarding was a new
I remember this
new metal sport, and everybody was there. And so skateboarders do their thing, and everything, and everybody you can hear. It's like a crescendo of power drives, I thought, So I eliminated everything from my head. And I started shooting shadows.
Yeah, not
a new idea, but you can see at the top of that frame there's a tip of a sneaker, very tip of a sneaker, way at the top. And right there. See the white? That's the tip of the athlete's shoe. And so I sent this picture in to Zuma. And again, the hugely experienced Jimmy Colton got it. And he went back in. I didn't put a caption on it. I just said shadows from skateboarding. And he went back in and started looking at all the other athletes and their competition. And he found that sneaker. And he found the corresponding scuff on the top of the sneaker corresponded to the footwear of the gold medal winner. So that's the shadow of the gold medal winner, which gives the picture a lot more credibility And Jimmy wrote to me, and I was like so embarrassed. He's like, captions, captions, captions. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like an idiot.
That's first of all, amazing that he cared that much to put in that ambition. There's plenty of people that would have been like, this is already over with, moving on. But that's unbelievable. And shooting, first of all, and I'm probably going to get ranty here, but like shooting, skating, and BMX like that, yeah, everybody's whole thing was sequence shots. And it always drove me crazy, especially in my early days. I couldn't afford to do those shots because I was shooting on slide film, which made me broke. So,
exactly.
You know, if anybody who knows what I'm talking about with E6 processing, it just drove you crazy. And you had to shoot slides because the magazines wouldn't take negative most of the time. They would always favor a chrome over a negative if it was color. So I ended up shooting chromes. So I wasn't going to, and then at the time, the Nikon F5 was shooting 8 frames a second. That means I had 3 seconds of shooting before I was out another 20 something, 20, 30 bucks. Right. So I had to find ways that I wouldn't get this motor drive and I would shoot something that was more substantial. So I would always go to the back sides of the ramps and go and show from the other side how tall the ramp is. Cause you can't tell how big a ramp is by this. You can tell it from the back side. That's where you see a vertical line. So that's how I would shoot it. Well, one time I'm shooting and an editor said like, yeah, we like those, but I really need you to get in there on this one. 14 millimeter 2.8 lens. Guy cracks my skull because I stepped in too tight. And
did you have your eye on the camera? Did that distort your position?
I mean, you can't tell how close you are.
Exactly.
You really can't. And at that time, I didn't realize first of all, I was a kid. I had the shots are up on Instagram. Actually, I have no tattoos really. There's nothing behind my eyes while my head's totally cracked open. But I just remember like, there's really no right answer to where you're going to be for it. But if you're shooting for client, they think they have the answer they want, but you still got to go find your own at some point and trust that they'll bring you on because of your perspective. But I still have this nudge back here.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Well, you're hard-headed.
Yeah. You know, it's these things that like, I don't think those stories exist anymore. You know, like I just don't know. And at the Olympics, are you even able to do things like remote cameras and from your position? Like, can you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can make arrangements for that. Everybody, prior, you have to all be on a list and you're assigned a channel, because you don't want to be tripping anybody else's stuff.
Yeah. That's smart. Oh my gosh, guys, we've been going at it for a while. There's one question from Hugo. How did the shoot go in Tokyo today? Distance from the subject and focal length, and what kind of flash and light modifier?
Oh, you mean the Mount Fuji picture? Maybe that was the back.
Oh no, Mount Fuji's back. Sorry, guys. This has been a crazy day.
There we go. Yeah, so it's one light, a little bit of a warming gel on it. It's raw light, just simulating daylight. It's a Profoto, I think B1X.
Back then, yeah.
And it's just nothing major. High roller, it's on a high roller because he's getting a fair amount of height. And you don't want to underlight something like that. You want it to be in what would be a logical position potentially for the sun to be in.
Right.
Even though the sun's not there, where the light is coming from. So, I asked him to put his hands over his heart when he bounced off the trampoline. I suggested that to him. He was doing splits and athletic stuff, and I thought, why don't you just do something a little more soulful? Put your hands over your heart. You love Japan. It's your home country. And this is the symbol of it. And he did that for me, which was very gracious of him.
Nice. Brad saying, now we know why Seth shoots with both eyes open. I've always, you shoot with both eyes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always like, all right, I'm on that shot. Let's get it. While I'm getting that, I'm looking for the next frame. Usually it drives me crazy. I think it makes me more tired and schizophrenic when I'm done shooting.
Well, but I'm totally in that camp, and I think it was partly because in my early career I shot a lot of rangefinder.
Oh yeah. Rangefinder, I'll tell you, people either gel with it or they don't. It's kind of this interesting. When you throw someone a rangefinder, you really find out what kind of habits they have as a shooter. So I find, it would be cool if Nikon made a rangefinder Z series. Just saying.
Yeah, I really miss the Nikon, the TI.
Oh, the 35 Ti.
35. They meant a 35 and a 28, and I've joked with them a little bit. Hey, you got to bring something like that back.
But what was special about it was the first one with matrix metering.
Yes.
We're kind of past that point.
And you know what? I would bring it on location with me, and I would shoot. There was a Kodak film, and I'm going to mess this up, but it was C41, so you could process it at a CVS.
But it was black and white.
But it was black and white.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of it. But then, you'd have this small set of black and white prints, which was like wonderful out on location. And you could turn it around. It wasn't important stuff, wasn't assignment stuff. So you turn it around at a drugstore.
Yeah. I used the Ilford version, which was Delta. And it was done on dye clouds instead of silver gelatin. So yeah, it was black and white. But it was dye clouds that were just not saturated color.
Yeah,
C41.
It was like kind of almost like the Kodak one had a tiny bit of like almost a sepia tone.
Oh yeah.
It was a little on the warmer side.
Depending on where you went, it would either be a little green or a little warm, or some, if you were really special, purple. Do you remember those when they were like, because it was almost like a selenium toner that was overdone, so I had like a lavender tint to it, and it would anyway.
But what's gone out of the equation is when on a major shoot, I would go into U.S. Color, which used to be down on Bleecker Street and Crosby.
Yep.
And I would bring in, literally, I'm not exaggerating here, 120, 150 rolls of 120, for instance, and
12 frames.
Yes, 12 frames.
Like people think it's like, whoa, it's like it was 12 frames 100 times over. Now you're shooting 5,000 shots on your card.
But I would check in with him if I was about to drop a big batch. I would check in with him like, where's the E6 run? Is it older? Have you freshed it up? Is it current? Could I see a couple of frames that just came out, or drop a couple of rolls in and say, all right, now we're good to go.
Yeah, because there was an organic part to it all. What was funny was I lived on cross-processing E6 to C41. And that would give you a blue base resin as your negative, and you could print C prints, color prints out of slide film. It would make the color. It was almost, think about Fight Club. It had that kind of a look to it, right? If you went to a proper house and said, I want to cross-process, they would either tell you to never come back, or they would overcharge you, or wait till the end of the cycle. They'd call you to come back. But I always went to a CVS when the kid didn't know what he was doing. And I was like, no. And they would just make me sign a note that said, I want this to happen. I'd wreck their chemistry and I'd get all my stuff processed. And it was pretty, I would always go to a place with an AGFA machine.
Huh.
The AGFA machines were like.
Yeah. I shot AGFA chrome.
Yeah. Or a
little bit of it.
What was it? Scalo, the black and white chrome was Scalo. Oh God, drive me crazy. Yeah. Black and white 400 CN sounds right to me.
Yes, that's it. CN. Who is that? Thank you, Michael. Yeah, 400 CN.
XP2, I think, was Ilford. I don't think that was Kodak. But the Delta, I think 2000 or something. We might even have it at the front register. I don't know. Man, wow, I feel old now. You must feel ancient.
Have some coffee.
yeah. I can't drink sugar, man. I can't do it. I have to have black like tar.
Oh my God.
I'm Greek, bro. Guys, thank you. I think we're going to call it on that one. Listen, don't forget, 5 o'clock, we're here again. We're going to shoot live. Go to Adorama Events right here on YouTube. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell so you're notified when we go live. This guy, he's going back in. I'm throwing him in. I'm putting him in. I'm going to get you a Rocky robe. I'm going to dress like Mickey. You got to go to the body. Go to the body. Go to the body. You got to go to the body. Oh, man, Joe, it's always a pleasure, man. And, don't forget, Joe's got this book, The Real Deal. We got a bunch of them here. So what are we doing with these?
We might give a couple away, right?
Oh, so there. If you come by at 5 o'clock today, Adorama 42 West 18th Street, some of these are getting given away to the crowd. So come hang out. It's a pretty good book. I mean, it's all right. It's all right.
It's all right.
I like this part where you mentioned me, though. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And it means a lot, Joe. I really appreciate it. Joe McNally, if you don't know him, you know him now. And that means you're also like not on this planet Earth if you don't know us. You can check out his work here. I think that camera has slowly been falling this entire time because we are way higher up on the frame than when we started. I cannot tell you the chaotic moaning. I apologize for any of the weird technical issues. Guys, thank you so much, Joe. Any last words, man?
No, if you have the QR code, can you find the QR code? Yeah. Just take a picture of the QR code and you can follow us, follow our studio. There it is right there.
Boom. There's the QR code for Joe. It probably should be white, but it'll work. Don't worry about it. If anything, we'll get it settled up for 5 o'clock, I promise. All right, guys, we will see you on the next one. Be good to each other. Later, guys.
Thank you.